657, a bill for an act requiring the Department of Natural Resources to identify specific animal sources of pollutants to a water of the state when determining the water's inclusion on a list of impaired waters. I'm here with Representative Fisher and Representative Srinivas. I'm Representative Hora. If you have anything to say for or against the bill, please approach the table, press the little button that looks like a person, and let us know who you are, and then you can speak for or against. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon. My name is Preston. I'm here on behalf of Humane World for Animals. We're currently registered neutral on the bill, but we have a couple pieces of information we would like to provide as well as some suggestions. As a quick personal anecdote, and I know we're on tough time today, I'll keep this quick. I'm personally invested in seeing what sort of tracing we can do for our water. This last summer, my infant daughter contracted a highly dangerous form of E. coli 0157. And during that time, I learned that the Iowa Health and Human Services Department can make people stay home for 6 weeks. So I think it's really important for public health in general to make sure that we know what is in our water and how we can help people keep safe. Generally, our organization does support the idea of gathering data about what sort of species or sources might be contributing to different bacteria or what have you in the water. However, we think that this current proposal will be incredibly cost prohibitive and just impractical for the DNR, especially when they're currently underfunded in many other areas. If you do move forward, we have some recommendations. First of all, make sure that all species, including humans, are included, and make sure that there is a huge amount of public transparency around that so that people can make as informed decisions as they can about what they think are the issues with our water. We also recommend that you include differences between natural sources, like wildlife that may be navigating through our state or living here, and human-involved sources, like farms or people dumping things, chemicals, what have you. We think that's very important. When looking at species, particularly like waterfowl, we do know that they can bring high levels of E. coli with them, but they also migrate very frequently, and it can be kind of a hard thing to nail down. So just a couple of pieces of feedback I had for you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Mackey Taylor. I'm representing the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club. We have a serious water quality problem in Iowa. We all know it, and we need to deal with it and not try to avoid it. And we believe that this is a distraction and a means of trying to avoid putting waters on the 303D list. There are two steps of dealing with an impaired water. One is putting it on the impaired waters list, and the second step is developing a TMDL, a total maximum daily load. You can put a water on an impaired waters list without knowing the source of the nutrients. And then during the TMDL process, if you need to know what or it's important, you can go ahead and do the analysis. And so this is putting the cart before the horse. It's expensive. And I would suggest if this moves forward, you need a fiscal review so you understand how much it's going to cost. But this bill is simply not needed, and it doesn't require any species distraction. I do agree with the Humane World when they say you need to determine what the species is. If you start doing it, it's all kinds of species. It's not just pigs or cattle or geese. It could also be humans. And so we would suggest that you not move this forward, or if you do, it needs some pretty serious updating.
I'm Wally. I'm the legal chair of the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club. I just want to clarify a couple of things based on what Pam said. The 303D list, or the impaired waters list, means that the water does not meet water quality standards. That does not require you to even know where the pollution is coming from. It certainly doesn't require you to know what species of animal is causing that. And it may be, not even be an animal that's causing it. There are many sources of pollution that would cause the water to not meet water quality standards. It's only when you do the TMDL, the total maximum daily load, that it's nice if you can get the source, because what the TMDL does, at least in Iowa, and I'll give the DNR a lot of credit, they go above and beyond what a TMDL really should be. they develop a water improvement plan. And it would certainly help to know where the pollution's coming from, what kind of pollution it is. But the 303D list has nothing to do with that.
This is Jason Palmer. I'm with the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. The department is currently undecided on this particular legislation. I'm here to answer any questions that come up, later throughout this process that you might have related to the technicality of what you're asking to do and things like that.
Hello, Colleen Fowle. I'm the Water Program Director for the Iowa Environmental Council. IEC supports water quality monitoring and source identification of pollutants, including funding for the DNR for tools like microbial source tracking to help guide solutions to Iowa's water quality issues. However, this bill would prevent the DNR from listing bacterial impairments until a source assessment is complete. Iowa currently has more than 330 bacterial impairments in our water bodies and only a handful of source assessments. This change would significantly undercount impaired waters, increase public health risks, and leave people unaware of unsafe conditions for recreation, pets, and livestock. While identifying the sources of contamination is really valuable for long-term solutions, we do not need to know the species of animal to determine whether bacterial levels pose an immediate health risk. Most importantly, IEC is concerned that this bill could put Iowa out of compliance with the Clean Water Act because states are not allowed to create standards that are less restrictive than federal regulations. And for these reasons, we urge a no vote. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Representatives. Teresa Harms here on behalf of Des Moines Waterworks. We're monitoring this legislation, and our CEO asked that I provide her statement. So on behalf of Amy Kahler, what science cannot reliably do, or excuse me, our current water quality science can reliably determine whether fecal contamination is present in a water body today. That is well established. What science cannot reliably do, especially for regulatory purposes, is what this bill then requires, which is to identify each species of animal contributing to fecal bacteria and assign a percentage to contribution to each. Even advanced tools like microbial source tracking can, at best, distinguish broad sources of categories such as human, bird, livestock, or similar wildlife like deer. Methods cannot separate cattle from deer, geese from ducks, or multiple wildlife species in a mixed water, nor can they produce precise or defensible percentage breakdowns. Results vary significantly with weather, season, and sample timing. Meeting this requirement would also be cost prohibitive. Species levels source tracking would require repeated sampling across seasons and flow conditions, specialized laboratory analysis, and extensive quality controls. This would significantly increase monitoring costs and reduce the number of waters that could be accessed. Finally, the bill creates potential conflict with the federal clean water implementation, which you just heard from the Environmental Council. The EPA does not require species level attribution and percentage designation to its list for impaired waters. And for those reasons, we remain neutral, but in the same time have concerns, particularly about the cost. Thank you.
Anyone else? Do you have any comments or questions?
I want to thank everybody for being here today and sharing your thoughts. What is overwhelmingly clear to me from what everybody said today that this piece of legislation could really be dangerous from a public health standpoint, from an ability to work on the clean water issues that we have in our state. It would prevent us from listing things that enable us to get federal funding, which is basically turning away free money to help keep Iowans safe. We've already had issues in our state that have resulted in deaths from infections from the water. We had an N. fowleri, which is a brain-eating amoeba infection in one of our lakes just in 2022. And it was a swift warning that was able to happen that enabled others from dying of the same disease. So I am concerned that we are impeding our ability to be able to do those warnings and keep Iowans safe if we pass this bill. It also violates the federal act, as people have mentioned today. And on top of that, it doesn't even work with science that's available. So this bill is regulating and mandating something that's not even possible by our scientific prowess today. With all of that in mind, I have to vote against this bill, so thank you all for being here.
Representative Fisher?
No, all I'm gonna say is, it seems like more data is a good idea. I mean, you really, I'm an engineer, and one of the things you learn as an engineer is you simply can't solve a problem unless you can identify the root cause, and this helps us identify the root cause, so I'll support it.
Thank you. Is it Jason from the DNR? What was your name?
Jason Ball.
Jason.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question for you?
Sure.
So, it says, beginning in 2023, the DNR began working on an expanded sampling program. Can you explain that to me?
Yes, the expanded sampling program, I think that you're alluding to in your document there, would be a screening of a subset of state park beaches across the state of Iowa, where we did utilize or are currently utilizing microbial source tracking to look to see whether or not there is the presence of DNA related to, marker DNA related to things like bovine or swine, Canadian geese, humans, dogs, things like that. What this allows us to do is to see whether or not there are genetic material from those individual organisms present in a sample, and it's often delivered to us in the form of gene copies per liter. But what it does not do is it does not allow us to say the fecal indicator bacteria or E. coli, which is what is being tested every week at the beaches, and that's our actual indicator organism that we use. It doesn't say how much of the slice of that pie, if you will, of the fecal indicator bacteria come from the different sources, because we're not actually testing the bacteria for a genetic marker. We're testing a whole volume water sample for that genetic marker. So you can take those pieces of information together and start to build a picture of different sources that might be present in a water body and look at the timing and magnitude of those sources. But what you can't do is attribute a percentage or a breakdown of the amount of the actual fecal indicator bacteria that we're concerned with in the waterway that comes from those different sources.
Okay. So, do you know what the cost of that is, what you guys are already doing?
Yeah, so relying on predominantly federal grants to augment our sampling, we're looking for those 4 systems in the neighborhood of about $50,000 to $60,000 a year, just for that particular, just for the source tracking and pathogen analysis component.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, if there's nothing else, we will adjourn the meeting.